In this video, we're going to be tying a Klinkhamer. The first thing I did is I actually took a Tiemco 200R hook and I put a slight bend in the hook. And the reason for that is the parachute post and the hackle is going to sit on this flat part here. Then the body will sit down into the water, making the fly look like it's emerging. Now you can do this bend either with your vice jaws or a pair of pliers. You want to be careful that you don't bend it too much. You just need a slight bend in it. If you bend it too much, you can break the hook. And we make that bend at about the 2/3 point up from the body, about 1/3 of the way back from the eye. So the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to start our thread. I start it kind of right in the middle of the head portion. And we're just going to lay down a quick thread base to work with here. And I'm going to take it about a hook eye's length up from the spot where I bent the hook. And right there we're going to tie in a parachute post. I'm going to use a little bit of white McFly line. I'm going to lash it down right in the middle of the McFly line. I'm going to draw the McFly line up together, and I'm just going to go around the material, parachute post style here, and just draw it together into one cohesive piece. And I want to make sure I build up a nice sturdy little post that I can wrap my hackle on. I'm going to go up about a hook eye's length up that post as well. Then you can kind of separate all the fibers and work them together. Now we can take our thread and we're going to go down the body and we're going to dub a body. And for this you can use a lot of different types of dubbing. I like to use a more natural dubbing. I use the Hareline dubbing. And the beauty of this fly is it can be tied in a multitude of colors. It can be tied in browns, tans, grays, olives. It just depends on the type of insect that you're going to imitate. Brown has always been a real popular color, so we're going to tie the Klinkhamer in brown. I'd say probably the grays and tans are the next most popular colors. Grays kind of just as a general imitation of mayflies. And we're going to start with a nice slim rear portion of the body, and we just kind of build it up and taper it as we work our way forward. You can use a little bit of dubbing wax if you like to help you bind that dubbing to the material or to the thread. I just kind of work my way forward, just slowly building up that taper. We're going to take it almost all the way up to the post. We're going to stop kind of right at that kink that we made in the hook. I do add my dubbing a little slower than a lot of other people do. I like to really control the taper of the fly just by adding a little bit at a time. If you add too much, it's impossible to control the taper of the fly. It'll just kind of all get out of control and your fly will end up lumpy and bulky. So I just like to add a little bit at a time. It takes a little bit more time. It's probably a little more painful to watch on video, but it makes for a better looking fly for sure. And almost there. I'm just going to finish it off right here at the end. There we go. Then we're going to take our thread to just in front of the post. If you have any guard hairs from your dubbing, you can either leave them in or you can pull them out. Just depends on the look that you're going for and what you like. I usually pull out some of the really long ones that are near the bottom. Now we're ready for our hackle. For this I'm just going to use a whiting high and dry rooster cape. And I'm just going to select a feather that is the right size. And the Klinkhamer, generally the hackle on the Klinkhamer is slightly, I'd say just slightly oversized compared to other flies of the size. Reason being is you want to have that that hackle hold up kind of that sinking body. So the hackle is slightly oversized. It's a little bit bigger than you probably would on like a small mayfly or something like that. So I'm going to take that hackle, I'm going to strip off all those base feathers, and I'm going to tie it in by the stem right in front of my parachute post. Then I'm actually going to take the feather and I'm going to draw it up along with the parachute post, and I'm going to wrap that feather up the parachute post so that the stem is tied to the parachute post. And I can wrap back down, get back on the shank. I'm just going to let that sit there for a second on the parachute post. I'm going to wrap my thread forward to the eye. Now we're ready to wrap the body, or the thorax, the front portion of the fly, and for that we're going to use some Peacock Herl. I'm going to tie this in right at the front. Then I'm going to take my thread, I'm going to jump it over that Peacock Herl, and I'm going to take it back to that post. I'm going to take my Peacock Herl and I'm just going to build up a thorax with it. Then I can take my thread. All I'm going to do is just capture it around the post just as I did my hackle. Then I'm going to take my hackle, I'm going to wrap it around the post, working my way down the post all the way to the thorax. Once I get to the thorax, I can take my thread, which is just hanging there, and I can work it underneath all those fibers. And you can trim out the excess. And then we can whip finish. Whip finishing can be a little tricky on this fly. I just need to whip finish underneath all these fibers. The more you practice this, the better that you will get at it. Then you can add a little bit of head cement in there to help keep everything in place. And I almost always trap a handful of fibers. Not perfect. I can never do it absolutely flawless, so I gotta get in there and trim those out. And then the next thing we're going to want to do is trim our post. We want to trim our post fairly long for this fly. We want to trim it about the length, kind of this back portion of the body, just kind of as a rough gauge. That way, when it's floating down the river, especially in current, you can see the puppy floating down the water. But pretty simple little fly to tie. It's only got 4 main materials, so it's not too complicated. It is a bit tricky in working with the hackle and whip finishing and also getting it tied in. But once you've tied a couple, you kind of get the gist of it. But we tied this in brown. We used brown body and brown hackle. But like I said, you can tie it in a lot of different colors, and you can really do anything that you want. And that is the Klinkhamer. And you can find the materials to tie this fly on our website, intheriffle.com. If you're watching this via YouTube, there is a link below the video in the description. There you can follow that link to our website, and you can find all the materials that we used as well as recipe information. And that is the Klinkhamer dry fly.